computer.
Yes.
Got your beautiful purple shirt. Purple
Yes.
is my favorite color.
Oh, is it? It's a
Yeah.
royal color.
You're one of my favorite people, wearing one of my favorite colors. All right,
Very good. Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Arca with Andy Lipson. And today we will be discussing the issue of abortion.
Again.
Yes, we did do a video for some of our new listeners if they want to listen to an episode that we had done some time ago. And that was surrounding abortion that was happening around in Ireland, as well as in Argentina, and as well as
Poland?
yes, as well as the Brett Kavanaugh,
right.
one of the justice nominees at that time was being considered.
Who's now Supreme Court Justice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Again, I still do not understand why this country appoints them for life.
They're so good, we just can't get rid of them. We just want to keep them forever.
Oh, good. All right. So we will discuss this issue. And there has been strengthening, re-emboldened anti-abortion movement supported by the recent legislative victories in Alabama, Georgia, Ohio, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, Utah, and Arkansas.
And Alabama.
Arkansas. No?
Arkansas.
Gracias.
That does make sense, though, because it's Kansas with an AR.
Yeah.
So it's
So,
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Alabama was the one that was in the news the most, has got the most attention, but
Yes.
it's been a series of they're following in the wake of all these heartbeat bills, what they call heartbeat bills, an attempt to basically pass bills that make it are trying to basically say make it illegal to provide to give an abortion. So it criminalizes the act for the doctors of providing abortions.
So this is you were mentioning the strictest, which is in Alabama, and all of these states that I just mentioned. These are the states that are trying to instigate. They're trying to provoke for Roe versus Wade to be overturned in the Supreme Court.
Right.
So this is why this is happening, and I should mention that it's Roe, just for some people if they're interested. Roe versus Wade is just the landmark decision that happened in
70s.
Yeah, where a
Early
40-year-old
70s,
woman, Jane Roe, was versus Wade, which was a district attorney in Dallas. He was enforcing the anti-abortion law in Texas, but they did allow it only if a woman's body was in danger, and so she fought against it, and eventually went all the way to the Supreme Court. And so this is what they're trying to, and ever since then they have been trying to overturn it.
Correct.
The anti-abortion movement.
Correct. What it made was for a period of time it was illegal to provide an abortion. Women had to, this whole period of back alley abortions or abortions done by people not either on themselves or by people who had no training, and tens of thousands of women were hurt and then sometimes killed. And it affected the poorest women most, because wealthier women could always get access to abortion. Even if it wasn't legal in this country, they could go somewhere else. They could go across the border to Canada. They could go to other countries. They could find ways of doing it in the country if they had the money. So wealthy people have always had access to abortion, and so the strict restrictions on abortion and making it illegal always punishes poorest women most, and women of color the most. And well, we'll get into it. There are actually two parts of it, though, which is there's Roe versus Wade retains the legality of providing abortion, but there's also the question of access to abortion. So those are the two ways which women's rights have been under attack, which is chipping away at women's access to abortion while constantly threatening to overturn Roe v. Wade to make it illegal to have abortions. There are 27 states currently that don't even have abortion providers.
And I know one state, Missouri, that has one clinic for an abortion.
There are at least, there are a number of states that only have one. And in the case of Ohio, in 1996, I think, it had 45 abortion providing areas. Now it has 10. So the women have been under attack by two different types of attacks around this. It has been the attack on Roe versus Wade, which is always coming up, and that's what this strategy is. While Trump is putting his various judges in place and conservative judges, the strategy here is what's been happening with all these is they pass the law, immediately they're challenged, they're seen as illegal in some cases, and so the law doesn't go into effect, but it goes up to the chain of to these permanent priest-like Supreme Court justices, and eventually it's supposed to get to them. And this is where the strategy is to see if they can overturn Roe versus Wade with any one of these decisions, whether it be Georgia or Ohio or Alabama. For the right wing, there was a sense that they might have overplayed their hand with the Alabama one because, doctors are supposed to go to jail for 99 years. I heard somebody said a doctor would go to jail more years for giving a woman abortion than somebody goes to jail for raping a woman, which basically tells you about what it thinks about women's rights.
And you said something that I want to touch on, which a journalist named Robin Marty. She wrote a book I forgot the title now. It's something post-Roe versus Wade, something post-Wade or post-Roe.
Post-Roe, yeah.
Post-Roe.
Post-Roe is like talking about as if Roe was overturned. What would that world be?
Yes. Like? So she wrote this book, and it was titled like that, something like that. And I will make sure that I provide the link for it. And she was saying that she feels as if the states, ever since Roe versus Wade, they essentially have already made layers upon layers of roadblocks to prevent access to abortion that has already it's as if it's already been overturned.
Right.
Because she was saying that there have been legislation that has been passed in these southern states where they make it so hard and so difficult for you, the waiting period after you visit a clinic, and then you have to wait 72 hours after that, and then
sometimes 24, sometimes 72, but sometimes 24.
Yes. Or even just the traveling to, as you were mentioning, traveling 5 to 6 hours to a clinic
because there's no provider, so you got to travel to get there.
Yes, yeah. And then the provider has to then read you out these like things like this could cause cancer to you if you take this abortion and everything. They have to legally say these things, something like that.
Right. They basically tell people what these risks are, how, and what they are supposed to. You're supposed to. In some cases, you have to listen to the heartbeat of the kid.
Yes.
One of the major ways they do it is by having you have to talk to a counselor first. The counselor's going to talk to you about this abortion, then 24 hours. Then you get to see the doctor and attempt to have it. Now that's a hardship for people because first of all, the cost of the abortion is not cheap. It's not, the government, since the Hyde Act under Jimmy Carter, the Hyde Act basically really connected the notion that the government is going to be out of the business of paying for abortions. The Hyde Act basically said no Medicaid could be used for that. This same Hyde Act, which was subsequently used in the what's Obama's health care called?
Affordable Care Act.
Affordable Care Act. Obama, in passing the Affordable Care Act, he had to basically put in that provisions that said none of this money would go towards abortions, and in fact put a kind of a situation that if you was going to provide abortions, you would pay for your health care, but then you would also do a separate payment if you were going to have the possibility of access to abortion. And now came out and said this was basically very similar to the Hyde Act and has made it so that not only is the government not providing any money for the abortion and making it harder for them to do it, it's now creating an incentive for private insurers to not do it. So this is not just something going on in the South. This has been the lack of access to abortion and the difficulties women face in trying to have an abortion, the financial cost of bearing it, plus the financial cost of going to some faraway town, going there for a day, Then you get, worked over by people who might be outside the clinic.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
yes.
Worked over by people inside the clinic. Then you've got to leave that clinic, get a hotel for a day, get some food, go back the next 24 hours and try to do this. This isn't $1,000, $1,500. I don't even think you've paid yet for the abortion. And so
the psychological cost to it as well.
yes, and it's outrageous. I mean, I think it to me, this issue, maybe it would be worth talking about. I mean, I feel like this issue shows me how backwards the situation for women are. I know there's been some talk about the Me Too movement and about it advancing women's cause, and I do believe that women getting their stories out, and this is also stories of men about sexual abuse and things like that, but the women getting their stories out of sexual harassment, sexual abuse is empowering and meaningful. But I believe that the cause of women's rights is in retreat. And I think one of the biggest bellwethers of that is the situation around abortion rights. Obviously, we are seeing in Alabama, Ohio, and places like that, the sharp tip of the spear that are on the attack on women, but it's happening all across the country, and it's done by, again, both Republicans and Democrats. Republicans are known for overturning Roe versus Wade, but it's been Democrats that have been most successful in doing two things. One is chipping away access, primarily under Bill Clinton, is where there was less access to health, to abortions under Bill Clinton. More access went away than under Ronald Reagan before him or George Bush Sr. And ideologically, there's been a retreat with the Democrats because the abortion rights movement pretty much adopted the slogan of safe, legal, but rare. Rare. Which basically means you should be ashamed to have one, first of all, and secondly, we're not going to make it very easy for you to get one. So the Democratic Party's slogan for this has been, we're going to strip access of this away from you while keeping your rights. So neither party can be trusted for really providing women something that is as humans, it's necessary to be able to control your body, but as workers, like if they as workers can't control what they do with their body, then they don't have any rights. Then this definitely hurts the cause of the working class, of men, of women. I think this is a very important issue. It's like a bellwether issue for indicating the direction things are going for women and for workers.
Mm-hmm. And legislation has been passed, has been trying to pass in these states, where they try to provoke for. This is not just recent. They have been trying to provoke for an overturn of Roe versus Wade, making incremental changes, like we mentioned, these 42, 72 hour, 24 hour waiting times, and as well as even 20-week. 20-week abortion ban for.
Oh, you mean like how long the kid, how long it's been gestating, kind of thing, right?
Yes, they try to make these small incremental changes. So, but they don't want to. Before 2016, they were doing this so that they could try to overturn, but they were testing the grounds but they didn't want it to go. They didn't want to accidentally. They didn't embolden themselves because they didn't want to accidentally uphold a Roe versus Wade in the court should this small incremental, large changes be made into these legislation and to the state legislation for abortion bans, which now is there a stark difference after 2016 because, as we can see now, with some of the strictest abortion bans are happening, and in Alabama, which is happening, I did want to say some things just to be clear for our listeners that I found out, because I wanted to make sure that we don't misinform the public, because there has been a lot of, even liberals have been sort of hyping this thing up with some false claims that we have to be careful about, that we don't try to misinform the public.
The truth is ugly enough.
Yeah. So Alabama, as you were saying, governor has signed the strictest USA abortion ban into
a woman governor.
Yes, banning all abortion except in cases where the mother's health is in serious risk. But this ban is not yet in effect. I had some claims that I will post to that abortion became illegal as soon as the bill was signed. This is something that has been circulating the internet, where it's now illegal. No, it's not yet. Hold on. Abortion did not become illegal as soon as the bill was signed. There still can be abortions at this moment. So if you're a person out there that is interested in getting an abortion, or you know someone, you can still do it, because
in Alabama, with the maybe 2 providers that they have,
it isn't scheduled to go into effect for another 6 months. So if it ever does,
because there's legal challenges to it, right?
And then,
by the way, that's one of the strategies for trying to get women not to do this, is to promote news like this that basically says, oh, it's illegal, you can't do it, is to terrify women and terrorize them into not having these abortions.
Claim to. Something that I read was also that women, yes, women can still go get an abortion. Their appointments can still proceed. So whatever appointment you have, it can still proceed. So unless the Supreme Court decides otherwise, women have appointments, can still go to and take their procedure. One other thing that was circulated a lot is women who get an abortion will go to prison, or they will be considered felons. This is not true. Doctors are the ones who will be considered.
Right. That's what
So it's not the women will get will go to prison. The Alabama law specifies that women who receive an abortion will not be held criminal culpable or civilly liable. And you were mentioning.
I don't think you're mentioning that to say, oh, it's not an attack on women. You're just being clear.
I think that it's be clear, because I think that one thing I think we discuss here, and you privately and we discuss something, and it is that I always believe that we should get things correct. The facts straight.
Yes.
You and I know that we have this ongoing argument.
Disagree.
Because I'm always afraid. And I think that I was just reading and I thought, and it was sort of, there's a lot of cloudedness amongst, because everyone is attacking everyone. And I thought, it's so, how do you get something straight? And people were saying that women are going to go get imprisoned.
Right.
Doctors are the ones, and you did say, and I should mention that it's Section 6A in that legislation in Alabama that reads, an abortion performed in violation of this act is a Class A felony for doctors, 10 to 99 years in prison. And that's for even attempting to perform an abortion, not even having, So that's all I
didn't know that. I actually thought it was doing it. I didn't know if you attempted.
Yeah, for even attempting. So so that's what that's what I read, and I will post it. So if someone finds something else, please say it in the comments below, and then we can try to. And I'm willing to be corrected.
I think you're right.
That's all I wanted to clear.
I mean, it is true, though. I mean, the reason in this case, I agree with you, because if you use false information to base your beliefs, then you're going to be your ground's going to go right underneath you as soon as people provide you the real facts.
Yeah.
So I do think the left has a responsibility to actually provide the true information. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and those were just the things I saw that were murky and were not clear. Yeah. And I thought maybe I should mention it because we mentioned Alabama.
Yeah.
So that's it for that. With the other thing, we have not even. Well, you did talk about it, is the violent threats that these providers and the doctors.
Yes.
You mentioned something about the rallies or people standing outside of a clinic.
Yes.
It's amazing, really, what these providers go through.
Yeah.
And the bravery, the courage to just go and to work every day and to provide the service for women and to face the onslaught of attacks on them and very assaultive language.
Right. They're either jeered at or insulted, or they're told lies about the fact that there's women are being harmed inside these places, and a lot of times they're the things that are provided generally by the left have been abortion defense, basically. I mean, defensive abortion clinics. That is keeping, if they're actually people who are threatening physical violence, is you actually build like a wall, like a line of people who try to keep them out. Or secondly, I've heard of people who actually greet the person who's coming to be in the clinic and will help get them in there safely and comfort them basically while they're being either jeered at or being told lies about the place. So there is a grassroots element to the campaign, the attack on women's rights.
Yeah, I was listening to Democracy Now!, your favorite channel.
Proceed.
And And I was just listening that there was a provider that was being interviewed by Amy Goodman, and she's African American, and she provides the service, and just the bravery and how she continues to provide it even when she's feeling attacked, harassed, or even as there could potentially be imprisonment for her. She's going to continue to figure out a way to fight against it and work with other professionals. But I do see her as someone that is very courageous, and my heart just goes out, because it really is, even just another person I have here, just anyone can read the story. I will link it. Jen Villavicencio is an OBGYN in Michigan, and she Googled her name. I was reading the story, and her name was on an anti-choice website that identified medical professionals involved in the abortion cartel. Abortion cartel. So in this digital age, doctors and staff are facing an intrusion on their privacy as their personal information is being dispersed on the internet with an intent to harm. And so it's just all these things, I guess, is what I'm trying to say is there's layers upon layers of just attack on women's personal body and their rights. And so I think that if we paint this horror picture of what is going on, maybe we will be more awake to it.
Right, and the right wing, I mean, this is why they call it the Harpy Law. The right wing attempts to talk about abortion on this moral plane of the life of the child. That's how they talk about it. Or what about the life of the child? Now, it's very interesting to me that the minute a woman gets pregnant, her heartbeat doesn't matter at all. It's the heartbeat of something inside of her that becomes the most important focus. But really, the position of the left has historically and always been to understand this politically, which is that the right to have abortion and easy access to abortion, no apologies around abortion, not safe, legal, and rare, safe, legal, and able to access it anytime you want, right? And plenty. And plentiful, if you will. It should be like condoms. It should be like in the same way that they distribute needles, just to help people if they're going to use drugs or whatever, or do whatever, to do it safely. The access to abortion is a healthcare issue. It's a family planning issue. It's a woman's body's issue. I mean, 50% of the working class happens to have the possibility of getting pregnant. And if you are in that position, the ability to control your own life, should you get pregnant, so that you can decide whether to bring that pregnancy to term or not, that is a critical part of being able to control your life. Because the consequences that for your life, as everyone knows, because everyone has to consider, the majority of women who get abortions are women who've already had kids. That was one of the things I learned. And so they know what the consequences are of having children. A lot of times they're already struggling to do what the provider, and not just, but this is what they can provide, and they feel like if one more will just, it will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and it will break the family. And women need to be in a position so they can control those things. And not making abortion illegal is one way it can be attacked, but the lack of access to abortion is the other way it's been attacked. So these rights have already been eroded. I would describe it as like, this is not holding the line on Roe v. Wade does not mean women's lives are improving on this question. They have been getting worse and worse and worse.
This is what the journalist Robin Marchi is arguing.
Yeah, and we have to understand that the Republicans have a strategy for they're the bad cop, but the good cop in this again have been the Democratic Party, and we cannot rely on them because they have been part of of dismantling women's rights access to abortion. So we have to understand, we have to take it completely outside of the Republicans and Democrats and put it back in the hands of the working class to basically say, this is a women's rights issue. This is a working class issue. This is a healthcare issue. This is a fight oppression issue. And that is best fought by regular people. I personally think like some of the things that were done, I think the things that were done in the Me Too movement, the women telling their stories about how they were sexually harassed and getting rid of that shame. I think some of those sorts of things are the things that are going to need to be done here, because this woman Carol Sanger, who wrote a book about abortion, said one of the things that's happened is it's been turned into this very secret, very private, very shameful act. And she's saying that has to be undone. And I agree with her. We have to bring abortion into the light of like, no, this is good that you did this. This is you taking control of your life. Another statistic I saw, a longitudinal study following about 1,000 women for maybe about 10 years or so, found that 95% of the women who had an abortion felt like it was the right thing for them. And that's very significant. And that's over it wasn't 10 years, it was over a 3-year term. It wasn't 10 years, it was 3. So it's a critical right that all workers should support, and men have to support it because we also will be, often have partners who will be deciding these things or not, but we have to support it as a part of supporting the struggle of workers to liberate themselves. And women cannot be free if they can't control their bodies.
Yes, I agree. And we have already stated our positions here on what's left. I invite people to really look at the episode that we had already made on abortion. I think it was called something pro-choice or right?
I don't remember. Yeah.
Well,
yes. Yeah.
I think we're discussing where we stand on it, right? And I invite our audience to go see it, to our listeners to go see it or hear it again. Because we have already stated our background, how we came to our positions, and how we really come to solidify this position of ours. And again, being pro-choice does not mean that you are for you're asking a woman to abort. You're asking a woman to choose for herself. She can choose to abort. We are simply allowing the space, right, for her to make that choice or not. Doesn't mean that I am against reproduction, is what I wanted to say in the last video. I remember saying that said reproduction is fine. It's simply leave it in the hands of a woman to decide if she wants to do that with her body or not. Does that make sense? The way I framed it, I think.
It does. I mean, I guess I'm for women deciding what they do with their bodies, and I don't think anybody should, if they want to have sex, they should have sex. If it happens to lead to getting pregnant, it does. If they want to abort, they can abort. They have complete freedom to decide what they do with their bodies, just as men should have the complete freedom to decide any of those questions.
Right.
And I don't know if of course I agree with you but I would say, like, we don't have to say I don't think we have to say we're for reproduction. I'm for women having the right.
I said I am for it.
Yeah. Okay, but I guess I'm centering it on the right to women to do as they please with their bodies, because it's their body.
Yeah, and when I say I'm for reproduction, I don't mean go ahead and reproduce if I'm not reproducing myself. I'm simply saying that if that is your choice, it's within your hands. It's your choice.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's framed or my word usage is a little weird in how I put it.
Yeah.
That is, we've already made it. We've already made the episode. But what I think what we keep coming back to is, and I think I'm going to maybe you can do it again in a different way, is how will a socialist, this is where I want to sort of shift gears to, how will a socialist see women's reproductive rights and the choice for herself and her body in a socialist context?
Any socialist society that didn't make it on demand, safe, legal, distributing, like there are these drugs women can take within the first 20 weeks. I'm not sure if it's 20 weeks, it might be 15 weeks. That are like really fairly simple. Only 0.2% of the women who take these drugs have complications, but the first set of hormones you take basically shuts down your ovulation system. The next drug shuts down or makes your uterus essentially release the egg that's just trying to implant itself in the uterus, and you miscarry, or you release the egg, and it's basically a completely private, relatively safe way of having an abortion. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go outside your home. That drug should be on the stands. Like in a social society, that drug should be like we're passing them around like candy, honestly, because women should be able to control those sorts of things. So I would say any social society that doesn't liberate people and say, you're free to have sex, you're free to do what you want with your body, you're free to, if you get pregnant, you're free to decide, and we will help you plan this out. And once the kid is had, if you choose to have the kid, the society, has a responsibility in helping you raise that child, helping you clothe it, helping you feed it, right? It's not just born by the woman or just born by the family. So it goes much farther than just you have access to abortion, you get to make the decision. That is, a social society must allow women to make that decision without any challenge, without any shame. That's one thing I would know. But secondarily, if women should choose to have the child, then the social society would also say, we're not just putting that on you. It's a responsibility all of us bear, because we all have a stake in the raising of children in this society.
Mm-hmm. You said something very interesting that I think we should point out, that here are these people taking away the choice of abortion, and yet they make it so hard for a family to really raise a child.
They're the same ones who often are advocating for dismantling welfare, for dismantling money for kids, things like, it's food stamps.
How then so you're so pro-life, but how are you then providing the environment, the climate, for the sphere for this life that you're supporting, that you so want to defend, that you even say that the abortion must be banned even in cases of incest and rape, according to this ban in Alabama, and yet there aren't the welfare state there around to support a life being nurtured in a very hardship already classist and capitalistic society, where a single mother or just any parent really would have a hard time to have raising a child.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's just it goes against, I think, even religious beliefs. I would say, now saying religious beliefs, and God being placed into this. Where is the separation of church and state?
And one thing I will, I didn't get a chance to look too much into this. I know that Alyssa Milano, who is often credited with being one of the leaders of the current Me Too movement. I know that she was outspoken in opposing these laws. That's good, and she was the one who used her stature within the Me Too movement to call for a sex strike, to basically don't have sex, and the people went after her on some of that, and I'll tell you some things about some of the criticism she took that I think is BS. But I think one of the weaknesses of that approach is it seems to assume that it's only men who are against abortion rights. There are many, many women, and many women, young women, many women of color. There are these marches that occur in San Francisco, the Right to Life marches, and they are massive, and they have lots of women of color, Latina women, and African American women, and this is a working class issue. You can only best understand it. It is not best fought as women fighting for women. There are tons of women looking to take away women's right to choose, and as we saw in this woman governor in Alabama. So in that regard, Alyssa Milano has gotten it wrong, thinking that all her allies essentially are women, and that the men are her opponents. It is not just a question, and often a lot of these legislators are men, but it is really not a male versus woman issue. This issue comes down to oppressing women benefits the capitalist class in general, and getting them to get less money for their work, having them have less rights, having them live in a sense of fear and feeling like they're controlled. That benefits the capitalists, particularly because the capitalists so much rely on often the free labor of women to raise children and things like that. So they're an extremely exploited group, and that exploitation primarily benefits the capitalist. It does not actually benefit men all across the board. It actually hurts working class men to have women treated in such a way, I would claim. But the one criticism that I really reject that people made of Alyssa Milano, they go, she's just dividing people, which that part is true. There's a division there that's false, to say that women are all on one side and men are on the other. But a lot of the people who criticized her also said, we've got to get people out to vote. That's the real strategy for this. And inevitably what they're saying is, they're going to use the attack, this now new attack in Alabama and Georgia, Kentucky, Ohio, to then rejig up the vote for the Democratic gravy train under the notion that this is the way you're going to defend abortion rights, and it's a complete myth. The Democrats have been part and parcel of attacking abortion rights largely through the restrictions and lack of access. So again, I am more with Alyssa Milano well, I think she's also going to say vote for Democrat, but I just think that criticism that says she's wasting her time, we should vote for Democrats, that's even worse than what she's doing. And I do believe there's something in the Me Too movement, though, that speaks to a potential strategy for galvanizing people and for people breaking out of their isolation by essentially doing the same thing that the Me Too movement did, which is people talking about their stories, about how they had abortions and what it meant for them, why it was hard, but also why it was important for them. And I think to hear more and more and more of those stories normalizes it, and then at that point it becomes a working class issue of fighting for healthcare access, fighting for women's rights, and that's how we will have to fight for it in the same way that we're going to have to fight the Democrats and Republicans in order to get Medicare for all, getting free access to abortions that the government will pay for, that will be readily available and safe. That's something that workers are going to have to fight for as part of a working class struggle to transform society.
I think that as with every other issue that we keep talking about, there is still the missing link, which is the conversation about identity politics that we keep missing. Because I think what you're saying now is going to be, if anyone is going to write in the comment section after this, they're probably going to think that there is some misunderstanding. I think that so we really have to.
We do got to do that. Yeah.
Identity.
We keep putting it off.
Yeah.
I think.
I did say June. Remember, and I did say we should also, now that you brought up this other issue on Me Too.
But if you do write a response to this, I will actually get back to you. Eduardo might not. He takes a long time to write responses when people take up.
I don't actually. I don't pay attention to trolls. I don't read things. I get sent positive information from Andy. So if you attack me, I'm not going to read it. So I don't really care. Andy is my filter. He sends me positive things and I read it. Trolls deal with Andy. So yes, but I do take a while to.
But I hear what you're saying. I think that identity politics does bear on this and discussion. We haven't discussed the Me Too movement either.
And we will. We will. So I think for our listeners, I think that they should expect those two topics for sure pretty soon.
And I mean, here's one question. You raised this after our abortion rights. The last one, you said, "Well, who are we two men to talk about this?" I mean, in some ways, I think that's a kind of question that identity politics will pose to us, is like, why are we talking about this? I will raise, first of all, people should know that the reason we're talking about this is you said we should talk about it. I think it's important, but you're the one who said, hey, Alabama's this is almost our 1 year anniversary. We had planned an episode to talk about our 1 year anniversary, but when this stuff went down in Alabama, Eduardo was like, we got to talk about this. And so I think it does bear on saying, well, why do you feel like this is so important to talk about? I agree with you, but why do you think it is so important to talk about?
Well, I personally think it's very personal to me, because I know people who have had abortions, and the difficulties and even just the steps in just trying to think about an abortion for themselves is challenging enough for them. And I know one person in particular that was hospitalized after an abortion. And I think people cut out women to be these cruel murderers, as I've seen on many YouTube videos of these extremists, pro-lifers. And there are people who don't have that experience, but the person I know personally, because you asked me the question, has been hospitalized for months, and it was, and the decision is not something that was easily made. And I know people in my family as well. So I think that for me it's important that I become an ally to the people that I know, an ally to my family, an ally to the people that I care about, and largely have this discussion and to add to it on YouTube, so that people can have another some other media, like they're watching us and they could listen to this. I don't think that we will have everyone on board with the same agreement for everything, but I think that if we present our case here at What's Left, I show my feeling, my viewpoint on it, and you show yours, and from two different perspectives, I think that hopefully maybe I will touch someone and you touch another, or we hopefully I think we can change someone. No, that's just, I think, for me on a personal level.
Yeah, but in this episode, there's not much. We're not going to really debate things because both of us are
pro-choice,
very much advocates for women being able to choose what they do.
Yeah, you don't like these pro-choice labels and things like that, I've noticed.
Well, I would say
I'm always observing how Andy talks about things, language. It is. Hold on, I will say pro-choice is a very liberal coined word, and I think it divides people. Yes, I think that these are the hashtags of democratic words to pull you into, I'm pro-choice, vote for me, sort of.
Right.
But I notice that you sort of move away from language that way.
I still would ultimately say yes, I'm pro-choice, but the way I understand this is a women's rights issue. Pay
attention, everyone.
Well, I mean, I understand this as a right, and as the right of a woman to control her body and to decide what she does with her life, and so that is it's not just a single choice of are you going to have a kid or not. It's on a whole array of choices. For women, ultimately for workers, this is it's a class issue for me ultimately. That bears on the fact that working class men must defend women here on their ability to protect. And if we don't, it's the same as immigration. If workers in this country want to keep immigrants out and think that they're protecting themselves, they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. They're hurting their own cause because we're just playing into the hands of the capitalists, of the wealthy, when we do things like that. So,
so I think that's what we have to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a friend of mine who lives in New York. I've reached out to her. She provides abortions. She's a doctor, and she's actually had some of the experiences you've talked about of being demonized by people who are anti-abortion, lunatics, and that's what they are. I mean, and zealots, extremists, terrorists in some cases. Those are real terrorists there, and they tried to bully her, but she didn't back down. And I hope we could interview her. You could meet her, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see if we can do it. If we can, I would love to get her story out.
We should, yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention just a case that on the 7th of May, a clinic escort was hit by a crowd at the West Alabama Women's Center in Tuscaloosa.
All
right, thank you. I'll just this was a man in his SUV that went right into the escort who was standing in the parking lot. The escort had to receive emergency medical care, and this was not a protester. This was just some member of a community that had been empowered or inspired by the anti-abortion activists to start coming and taking the anger out on providers and escorts. This is one of the things that has happened this month, and I wanted to highlight this because I keep trying to emphasize just the death threats, the violence that exist within these supposedly principled people that are evangelical.
And they're so concerned about the welfare and life of this.
Correct me first. Evangelical. Evangelistas. Evangelicists. Okay, edit. Christian people. Okay, principled people. These religious people. And the National Abortion Federation is an organization that tracks violence against abortion providers. Found that trespassing, obstructing patients from accessing care, and harassing phone calls all steeply increased in 2017, the latest year for which there is data. Providers reported 62 death threats or threats of harm in 2017, up from 33 the year before. I can go on, but you can all. I invite everyone to watch. I was just telling Andy that you can all watch this documentary called Trapped. It was at the Sundance Film Festival, and it talks about the hardships of these providers. I'm just going to read this part. The U.S. reproductive health clinics, this is about the documentary Trapped. U.S. reproductive health clinics are fighting to remain open. Since 2010, 288 TRAP, which is targeted regulations of abortion providers, laws have been passed by conservative state legislatures. Unable to comply with these far-reaching and medically unnecessary measures, clinics have taken their fight to the courts. And TRAP follows the struggles of clinic workers and lawyers who are on the front lines of the battle to keep abortion safe and legal for millions of U.S. American women. This is that documentary, Trapped, Trapped. And that is, I recommend it for everyone if they're interested in seeing it. I will give you the link so you can post it on the website.
And I think this TRAP thing, I think I read about it too, is actually a strategy. It's a strategy for making it, again, eliminating access by making it hard for abortion providers to find people who are allowed to provide an abortion. Like the doctor has to jump through all these hoops in order to do it. Like they have to be, I can't remember what the term is, but they have to have access to some hospital, something or another. I don't really know.
Just layers and layers of roadblocks.
Yes, but that is part of another strategy for making it hard. Make it hard for the women to get to the place. Make it hard for the people who work in these family clinics or abortion clinics to actually find people who are legally allowed to do this, because they have to conform to certain government regulations. The government's not going to give women any money to do it, but they're going to put all sorts of regulations on the abortion provider, on the women. It's very much like women are really under attack from the U.S. state on this question. And as much as people make fun of Ireland and think how backward it is there,
we are heading in the dark ages.
We are. It's the same thing happening in the United States, and it's been done by both of our political parties, and we will need a movement independent of them in order to actually undo all the damage that's been done.
So, I think that concludes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing this one up. I think, again, it shows that we do need to talk about identity politics, the Me Too movement.
June.
All sorts of stuff.
In June, we said.
Yes.
All right.
Do we know what we're talking about next week?
No.
I don't know what we're talking about next. Well, we'll find out. Eduardo will come up with something good.
All right.
He always does. His contacts at Democracy Now! Whisper in his ear and tell him, hey, make us talk about this thing. And they always regret it.
No, I listen to KPFA, Democracy Now!, Better Off Red, another podcast I recommend. Then I do listen to some sort of mainstream news, which is, I consider Vox to be mainstream, so it's just, I listen to stuff.
I have some colleagues also that for my work that I'm hoping to interview eventually, like these people I've been doing a lot of union work with, two newer union activists, Greg and Lizzie, are people who I also hope over the summer to interview, talk about our union work, but Greg's also a socialist. I'm not sure if Lizzie is, but she's written some stuff about capitalism. So I think that those are people I would like to get on the show as well.
All right. Yeah. And I was thinking of a topic, but I don't think I'll just mention it, and we don't have to do it. I just wanted to point out that there has been a 16-year-old boy, Guatemalan boy, that has died in the I called concentration camp or detention camp down at the border. Again, another child. So here we are, and this is the most children that have died under this administration since a decade. The last time children have died under administration held in detention camps because of immigration has been a decade since. And we have now, 5-6 children now that have died, two toddlers and teenagers, and it's just, I just wanted to point it out. But we don't have to do an episode on immigration. I invite our listeners to check out our immigration episode as well. It's just something to point out. So it could be that, it could be immigration again, or it could be something else. Identity politics will be on the list for sure.
Yes.
Right. For everyone that is listening, that is new, you can always subscribe, rate, review, and share with all and your family and your friends. Thank you very much for listening, and we will catch you again next week.
We'll see you next week.
Ciao. What?
No. It's not important. That's it.
What?
Just that, like, this is 52 episodes.
Oh, we should mention that.
That is literally a year of episodes.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I didn't think we were going to go this far.
I did not think we were going to go this far. So you came along for the ride, and I didn't think I would make it this far. So
we don't have
52.
A proper festive
like sparklers or something.
Yeah, and we've also had the most views for your episode.
Yeah, that's got a lot of views. And
more than 350 views, which is a lot for us, because I was only expecting we have 30 views for every video on YouTube. Now I'm a little afraid that we're reaching 300 views.
I'm more proud of our longevity and the fact that we've stuck
Andy always redirecting us too. It's good, Andy. Yes.
So I think we
longevity is. We've already. No, I don't know what to keep this.
We'll see if that goes somewhere in there.
We'll see, Andy. When you're editing this, we'll see. Up to me. So you remember. I don't want this later on. Well, no, it's recorded.